Hello and welcome to Power to Speak, the podcast, with my guest today, Tracey Howes. And Tracey, you are a free diver and a breathwork instructor, which sounds quite intriguing, really. Just give us a brief introduction to what that is before we take that deep dive.
Okay, well, free diving is holding your breath without the addition of any apparatus. So when you dive underwater, you hold your breath and you control your breathing muscles. And a breathwork instructor is somebody who teaches specific breathwork techniques to improve the use of the breathing muscles. And my specific certification is through the Oxygen Advantage, which is a science-based system to improve health and fitness.
Wow. And I know, because we know each other slightly from the network that we both belong to. You are the media, and this is something that you've turned to recently as a business. Although I could quite easily call you a water baby, because I think water's always been part of your life. But how did you get to the point here now to be using what you've always used in terms of breath and water and swimming and free diving to get to this point now and start this business doing exactly what I would imagine is a passion for you?
Very much so. I think you'd probably agree. If we're going to create a business, you've got to do something that you love. And for me, I've had several businesses over the last 11 years. My career has been varied, but the short answer to the question is really that I started learning breathwork techniques about 4 years ago because I was having some health issues. And despite medication and doctor's appointments and all the rest of it, nothing seemed to be working. And I was struggling with my sleep, and I was having panic attacks, which I'd never had before. So I immediately thought there was something wrong with my heart, which there wasn't. And I was recommended to consider meditation, and something that just was so foreign to me. I'd never done it before. And I went on a 10-day retreat, and it was a game changer in so many ways, because they focused specifically on nasal breathing, or also known as anapana, where you focus on the sensation of air moving in and out of your nose with your eyes closed, sitting on the floor or on a chair. And as simple as that sounds, when you do that for 10 days and you don't have any other distraction around you, you really tune in to the mind and body. And following that experience, I dramatically improved my sleep. The panic attacks started to subside. And I can confidently say now, 4 years later, I haven't experienced either of those. And it really triggered my interest in understanding more about breathing techniques and why it works. And I have been a PADI scuba diver for a number of years. And as much as I love being in the water, I felt very encumbered with equipment. And I knew about free diving, but at the time when I was living in London, there was no facilities to learn or to train. So when I relocated down to the south coast of England, I was very fortunate to discover a free diving club, which it was almost like it was a gift, really, because that's really where I would say my current journey started. And through free diving, with the focus on understanding the body, the mind, using yoga techniques, for example, to support that, and really being present, because when you hold your breath, especially underwater, as extreme as that sounds, it's like a mirror to your emotional state. And you can't think of anything else other than how you feel and where you are in that moment. And I can tell you that if I had not had that experience, I would feel like I was missing a limb. It's so part of me now. It's part of my DNA, is really. But it also connects back to when I was a child, because I started swimming as a baby. And loved spending time in the pool, holding my breath underwater, pretending to be a mermaid and loving all of that. So I think your memories from childhood suddenly you're triggered as you get older. And this, in my case, in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I started on this, I call it a journey because it really is a journey of discovery and learning and trying lots of different breathing techniques. And over the years, I discovered something called the Oxygen Advantage, which was a book recommended in the freediving community. And I discovered they do a certification program, so I signed up for that. And I'm now an advanced instructor. I can teach breathing techniques, but what I love is the parallel between the freediving techniques that I've learned with my training and my ongoing learning, because there's a lot of medical information now that's being shared in the public domain, which supports all of this experience and training that I've done. And I wanted to share this with the rest of the world, essentially, is whoever would listen. So that is my mission right now as a breathwork instructor, is to show people that you have the power to take back some control and improve your health, improve your fitness. Freediving is my favorite thing. It's my sport, and it's a lovely story to share with people. But essentially, at the end of the day, the clients that come to me, the transformations are remarkable.
So just picking up on that, the fact that obviously you're working with people on their breath work. What I do in my work as a voice and presentation coach is very much about breathing and getting people to breathe deeply so that they actually can self-regulate their nervous system and, diaphragmatic, using their diaphragm to get as much capacity into their lungs as they can, so taking as much oxygen as they can to help with anxiety. What you're doing seems like a completely different level of that. So I do it really almost as an internal external, whereas it sounds as if with your instructions, with what you teach, it's very much about the inner body and the mind.
Yeah, there's so much alignment in what we both do. I think where the training I've had has been, you can't have one without the other. So for freediving, we do a lot of diaphragmatic stretching, and we tend to breathe prior to going under the water through our mouth, very specific styles of breathing. We do something called segmented breathing, where you breathe into the stomach, you breathe into the chest, you breathe into the throat, and you do a lot of recovery breathing, obviously, when you come out. With the breathwork teaching that I'm sharing with people, we focus specifically on nasal breathing and diaphragmatic activation. So mouth is closed, and it should be. This is medically proven that when you breathe through your mouth, you're taking in unfiltered air. And when you hyperventilate, when you're stressed, for example, all this additional air puts so much pressure on the upper chest and the breathing muscles. That's what triggers inflammation, infection, and things like exercise-induced asthma, for example, for individuals that are very active. And by breathing through your nose, you are purifying the air, and it's got antibacterial properties. We have a microbiome in our nose, just like you have a microbiome in your gut. That's very specific for monitoring the quality of the air that we take in. And you can literally improve your immunity by only breathing through your nose when you have to. Because our mouths really should only be used for speaking and eating, realistically. And so with individuals, when they do my training with me, a lot of the time this is new for them, because if you think about when you're born, babies breathe very specifically. They breathe from the belly, breathe through the nose. As we get older, we are conditioned and we learn a lot of bad habits. And it's easier to breathe through the mouth, of course, because there's much bigger surface area. But the fact remains is that even though the nostrils are smaller, the quality of the air that we're taking in is better. And by learning, as you know, with diaphragmatic activation and getting people to understand how the diaphragm actually moves and impacts the body as a whole, you can breathe through your nose and breathe very deeply. And that is essentially what we want people to learn, is to breathe light, slow, and deep through the nose, using the diaphragm with a gentle pause after the exhale. That is functional breathing. And that's what really attracted me to the certification, because everything is practical. We can learn this. And the impact is remarkable. I mean, people improve their sleep very quickly within two to 3 weeks. I have people who've been on the course who haven't had more than 4 hours sleep a night for 2 years. Suddenly they're getting 7 hours sleep. That is life-changing for people.
Yeah.
And obviously what you were talking about, presentation skills. I mean, the joy of being able to feel confident in yourself and know that you're in control of your body just by knowing how to breathe properly before you're in front of a room.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, the breath side for me is fundamental. There's no point coming to work with me unless you're prepared to really practice. Because they're muscles at the end of the day. It's all about muscles, and actually the more you use them and the more you learn to use them, the more confident, as you say, you can be. But I was really interested. I fell down a rabbit hole of your Instagram, which I have put on my board. I'm not sure if you can see that. Let me see if you can see that. Oh, I don't know if you can.
No. Maybe just put the link up.
I will put the link up. Yeah. Yes, your Instagram is brilliant. I love your Instagram. There you go. And because there's so much in there about what you do, but what I came across that really I just needed to ask you what it was, and I think maybe you've explained a little bit, is the mouth taping. How does that work? Let me show you. I've got a picture here somewhere. There we go. This was on your Instagram. So tell us a little bit about mouth taping.
So mouth taping it's very, in terms of people knowing what it is, it's not known publicly. It was actually originally developed by dentists to help with healing after surgery, to get people to breathe through their nose and not through their mouth. And the tape that I use for my clients is called myotape, which can be ordered online. And basically how this works, on the premise of breathing through the nose, if you think in this way, ideally you want to breathe through your nose day and night. But when you're sleeping, you have no control necessarily over how you're breathing. So with clients that I work with, we get them to breathe through their nose during the day very mindfully, and in the evening, they tape their mouth so that the lips are gently pushed closed while you sleep, which encourages nasal breathing. And this is the game changer for so many people. If you suffer from insomnia, sleep apnea, or you on a CPAP machine where, just so uncomfortable and really noisy, any kind of, and especially women going through the menopause, sleep disorders increase dramatically in that period. Or stress and anxiety, when the heart rate and the cortisol levels are too high in the body, you're not going to get a restful sleep. And the mouth will generally, if you're on a very soft pillow and you are sleeping on your back, what ends up happening is the jaw relaxes, the trachea muscles relax, the tongue slides down and actually narrows your airways, and that causes snoring. So snoring is essentially turbulence in your upper airways, so in your throat and in your nasal cavity. And mouth taping can literally help you to stop snoring, stop completely. For some people, they have to wear it all the time. Other people, and I would put my hand up and say I'm one of them, I don't snore myself, but I do realize that occasionally my mouth will fall open at night and I'll wake up, and you've woken up with a dry mouth, which is an indicator that your mouth was open while you were sleeping. So by taping the mouth, what it does is it's hyperallergenic tape that sits very comfortably around the outside of the lips, so it doesn't seal your mouth. So people think, oh my God, I might get suffocated. No. All it does is it pushes it together. so that you breathe through your nose. And if you'd like me to go into more detail, I can.
Oh, please do.
So we have a molecule in our nasal cavity called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide it's very specific because it's only produced in the nasal cavity specifically. There's other types of nitric oxide in the blood, but this is different. It's not produced in the mouth. And it's a vasodilator. So by nasal breathing, you increase the production of nitric oxide in the nasal cavity. That means that your blood vessels are going to widen, which means you're going to get more oxygen into the lungs. And once the oxygen reaches the lungs, we have little sacs called alveoli sacs. And this is why I talk about light, slow, deep breathing. People think, how can you breathe light and deep at the same time? If you can manage a full breath through your nose and your diaphragm expands laterally, so shoulders are relaxed, rib cage expands, that is an indicator your diaphragm is activated and you're breathing deeply. At that point, the nitric oxide is helping shift the oxygen and moving it into the bloodstream. So you've got essentially this incredible facility in the body to help you breathe better and oxygenate your tissues better. And a little bit of sort of blood science, we do, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, but breath hold is a very good way, as well as humming on the exhale, to increase the production of nitric oxide in the body. Because what happens is the nitric oxide is like a facilitator as well. And it will trigger the carbon dioxide increase in the blood, will trigger hemoglobin proteins to release oxygen. So you can manually, as well as normally, actively increase your oxygenation into the blood and the tissues, just by understanding how to manipulate the production of nitric oxide in the body.
Wow. I was doing all of that as you were talking. I was automatically sort of breathing. I mean, and that whole kind of oxygen into your blood is so important, isn't it? It's just, to get all that oxygen around your brain. Our bodies are incredible at sort of maneuvering it all around our bodies. But, however, whatever we can do to help that has got to be good. It's got to be good. Brilliant. So in that case, then, in terms of taping your mouth when you sleep, I assume then that gives you an extra sort of 6-7 hours of you doing that, when normally you're kind of what was the nitric
oxide.
Nitric oxide. So if you're not breathing through your mouth during the night when you're sleeping, then obviously that's more time of you producing more of that. And
I literally, every single group that I do, people they come to me because they are not getting enough sleep. They don't want to snore, or they've never snored before, and suddenly they're going through the menopause and they're snoring. Or men, and men sometimes can be, sadly, the ones who suffer as well the most over the age of 45, because there is a change in vascular pressure in the body. And vascular pressure is another part of the breathing muscles not working correctly. And I'm going to add this to the conversation, but if you want to edit this out, you can. A good indicator for men that their vascular pressure is not working properly is that they should wake up in the morning with an erection. If they're not, that's an indicator that there is a problem. And normally that will also be an indicator that they have some kind of sleep disorder, or there's snoring problems.
Oh.
And so, this information is not, it's out there, but it's not, most of the time it's in medical journals. People don't know about it.
Yeah.
And I think there is definitely a need to understand more about how the body works, because when you have that understanding, then you're more likely to apply preventative measures.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit like being an athlete. You're not going to push yourself during the day, do all the right exercises, feed your body correctly, and then, you know, get 2 or 3 hours sleep a night and sleep with your mouth open.
Yeah.
That would just destroy all the good work you did during the day.
Yeah.
So, you know, for us, if you're going to breathe through your nose during the day, take steps to ensure you breathe through your nose during the night. And sleep trackers, you know, we have so much wearable tech these days. You can literally track the quality of your sleep. And with individuals that I've worked with who have Garmin watches, Fitbits, you know, there's a lot. I can go into a lot more detail on wearable tech if you'd like me to. But you can literally track your light, deep, and REM sleep.
Yeah, I do.
And if you're not getting enough of the deep and REM, it's because you're not getting enough oxygen into the body.
Yeah.
And that's usually because you're breathing through your mouth.
Yeah, I think I definitely breathe through my mouth for quite a lot of the night. I think I do wake up with a very dry mouth. So yeah, I assume that is. But I think my nose gets blocked. So I don't know if there's anything within nasal breathing that can actually clear.
There is.
The nasal.
It's so good you asked that question. In fact, I will send you a link to a nose unblocking exercise, which is remarkable because it sounds counterintuitive, but to unblock your nose, you need to hold your breath. Because the breath hold is going to increase the nitric oxide. It's a vasodilator, and it will open up the nose. You know, obviously, if you have a severe cold or infection, you're going to need medication, and that is not going to be, you know, the obvious answer. But if you just have general congestion and you're a normal, healthy individual, nose unblocking can be done by holding the nose and nodding the head forward and backwards for a specific amount of time. And you repeat this exercise, and that eventually will open up the nasal passages. Where I see people struggle is if they have, for example, deviated septum, or they have had some kind of nasal surgery, or empty nose syndrome, where they really just struggle to have any sense of, you know, functionality in the nose. So yes, there's certainly an area where, you know, you would involve a medical practitioner, but for the vast majority of us, knowing that you can do this simple exercise, which I'll share the link with you, can make a huge difference. And in the same regard, you know, combining that with the taping, you can literally change your breathing, because it's like anything. You practice, you get the results.
Yeah. No, that I will definitely try that. And my daughter has terrible issues with that. So that would be very, very helpful. And I will certainly put that link into any of the copy that I put out with this podcast, because that's incredibly helpful. You were talking about counterintuitive, and that was something for me when I saw you stand on the stage at the You Are the Media at the Lighthouse in Poole at the end of beginning of July, and you did a breathing exercise with the audience, which was incredible. There was something in there that for me was counterintuitive, and it was the holding your breath after an exhale.
Yeah.
So you're so used to kind of breathing in, holding, and then breathing out. But the exercise that we did with you was to actually exhale and then hold the breath before you take an in-breath. Why is that? Why does it feel counterintuitive to do that?
Mainly because what you just said, we all assume that when you say hold your breath, you inhale and you hold. And for free diving, I absolutely have to do that, otherwise I'd be in trouble. But in order to get an accurate measure, and I'll start with this before I talk about the exercise. When we do the course, we have scoring mechanisms for breathlessness. And it doesn't matter how healthy you are, whether you're a professional athlete or not. These scoring systems are a very good way to track, because if you hold on the inhale, essentially what's driving you to hold your breath is your own willpower. And some people can hold for longer than others. So that's not really accurate. If you do a passive exhale, there is no pressure within your breathing muscles, and we get a much more accurate breath measure of lung volume and breathlessness on the exhale because the body is relaxed. And to go back to the exercise, that particular one where you breathe in gently, you exhale passively, and then you hold for 5 seconds, and then breathe normally for 10 seconds. That is a specific breathing pattern to shift the body from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So the nervous system has these two systems. So it's, you've got fight and flight, and you've got rest and digest. So if you are in a state of stress, you want to be able to bring yourself out of that into parasympathetic. Using a breathing pattern like that can do that for you. And by exhaling, you get, it's a much more relaxed and more comfortable mode to practice the breath hold, because you're not putting any additional pressure and stress onto your cardiovascular system.
Yeah. It did feel counterintuitive to sort of breathe out, to let all of your breath go, and then try to hold it without taking it back in again. So it's going back to your childhood in South Africa. I mean, because you've got a gorgeous accent, and apparently you speak Zulu. Or you did from the age of 12 or something. So when you were back in South Africa, and I know you live by the sea there as you do now, so when you were in the water quite naturally as a child, were you conscious of any of this kind of breathing? Were you conscious of what you were actually doing when you were in the water at that stage?
I just knew that I liked holding my breath. There's no other explanation. I think because I was so young, I wouldn't have known really what that meant. But I liked being underwater, and I would, if we went snorkeling, I'd be diving down and holding my breath as long as I could. So I think I probably from a very young age developed a comfort around that. And it always felt very peaceful to me, and there was a lot to say for, again, your parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. But as a child, you're just doing it for fun. And now I understand the science behind it. I understand how to manipulate the body to make sure I can do that longer. I definitely think being exposed to water at a very young age. My dad used to surf, take me out on his surfboard. My grandfather taught me to swim. I've got pictures of me as a baby, sort of 18 months old, on a massive inflatable in a pool. So it's what I noticed though is you may find some people have had a bad experience as a child and they don't want to go near water after that, or they've always been told that water isn't safe. So they've got this mental conditioning around that it's not a good place to be. Whereas I was always told, it was always safety first, of course, but there was definitely a comfort around it. But interestingly, when I became an adult, and we have lots of large marine life in South Africa, particularly sharks, because I grew up around in Durban. I was in the ocean all the time. Never had there was never an issue. But when I started traveling, and I just thought, I didn't like swimming in deep water, deep open water. I just, I think years of terrible TV and watching images of, movies where you just think, oh, this is not safe, which is one of the main reasons I decided to get my Paddy scuba, because I wanted to go down underneath, and then if I could see everything, I'd be happy. But then I really felt uncomfortable with all the equipment, that heaviness of being in the water and just feeling really encumbered. Whereas with free diving, it's almost like I have a healthy respect for the water, but there's that overarching fear of deep water is not there like it used to be. And again, I just think that's practice and comfort.
Yeah, I wonder whether there is something in the womb being full of water. Is that us being in water from conception kind of thing is whether that's something comfortable, because I love water. I do feel comfortable in water, but I certainly haven't free dived, and the idea of diving with all that equipment is quite scary to me too, actually, because it's so heavy. It's all, there's that kind of fear of not being able to reach the surface again if you actually go under with all that stuff on your back. So
there's with free diving, I think what's really important is that we have very strict safety protocols. So, you don't just jump and hold your breath and off you go. You have to go through, rigorous training. And a lot of people will do a free diving course because they're going on holiday and they just want to, swim around, a few meters down by the coral reef. And that's absolutely fine. If you can spend some time down there, but not interfere, because the bubbles on the scuba equipment interfere with the marine life. So you end up having more intimate connections and experiences with the sea life, because they feel like you're one part of the you're part of the world. But I would say what's driven me beyond just recreational, because I compete as well, although we haven't been able to in the UK since 2019 with COVID. You are essentially competing with yourself, because it's all about how you manage your breathing and your mindset. And one thing I can say is, if you've had a bad day and you're stressed and your mind is all over the place, it's pretty impossible to hold your breath, because then you're just adding more stress to the body. So I do think the sport attracts very specific kinds of people. There's very much the spearfishing community, but then you've also got competitive free divers who, are sponsored and they live to train, and that's what they do all the time, to challenge depth and distance records. And then you've got others who love the sport, like me, who like to compete because it's a test for ourselves. But the bottom line is, I want to learn to be as good as I can be, so I can spend more time underwater and have those lovely experiences. And it's a great story to share with people, because it is, someone once referred to this as the most relaxed extreme sport.
Yes, but it is totally extreme. So what is the competition in free diving? Is it the depth? Is it the amount of time you spend under there? What is the competition? What are you competing for?
There's two different types of competition. There's depth and there's distance. So depth is done in the ocean and distance is done in a pool. And you have a number of disciplines. So some people like to specialize, other people like to do them all. The more varied you can be, the more points you get in a competition. And, the current world record for women's depth diving is 122 meters.
Wow.
And for men, it's 131. And that's diving. Yeah, it's amazing. And this is diving with a monofin, which is a single blade with your feet strapped into it. So that's a very specific depth for that discipline. You also have another one called variable weight, which is where you are attached to a mechanized pulley, which pulls you down to, you can go down to even more than 150 meters. And that's all about breath control, because you have to get to the bottom, stay conscious, pull a trigger, and then go back up and still remain conscious and do your safety protocol for it to be a valid dive. So it is pushing the limits of human ability. In the swimming pool, you don't have to worry about equalization, because that's the issue with depth. If you can't equalize your ears and change your breathing depending on your depth, you can do some serious physical damage to yourself. So all of those competitions have very high safety protocols. And the best free divers, the elite free divers, who regularly dive beyond 80 meters are, you can see this is an adaptive sport. You have to have done this for years for the body to adapt. You can't just suddenly do 100 meters. It doesn't work that way. In the pool, you don't have to equalize, but you have to be able to get comfortable with the discomfort of high CO2 in your blood. And that's why diaphragmatic activation and breathing exercises is very important for what I do. but it's also tied into just normal, everyday, better breathing.
Yeah.
So there's a huge, I think there's over 8 to 10 different disciplines across the depth and distance competitive world. And I personally very much like something called no fins, where I don't use any equipment except my arms and legs to pull me through the water.
Gosh, that's difficult.
And it's considered the purest form of free diving because you have to use your own, just you. Yeah. You don't have fins, you don't have anything. You are controlling your breath, and I find it extremely meditative. It just brings me a lot of joy. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, so what is your record for staying under?
My distance record is 84 meters.
And that's swimming underwater?
That's just swimming underwater with no fins, pulling myself. It's like a breaststroke, but horizontally underwater. And that would probably be a 1.5 minute dive. Wow. My goal is to, we all have goals. Work my way towards 100, which is 4 lengths of a 25-meter pool. And, that it's a competition with yourself. Yeah. It's getting more and more comfortable. I'm hoping to do more depth training. I'm started this year in the UK diving in a quarry because we don't have clear blue ocean like they do in the Mediterranean. But generally speaking, the diving, my personal favorites places to dive is Greece and Egypt.
Yeah, yeah. I did. I did snorkeling in the Barrier Reef, which was amazing. But yeah, I haven't done that diving. It's the. I've always worried about getting the bends when you come back up. Is that just it? What is that, the equalization thing? That if you come back up too fast?
Yes, you're more likely to get it with scuba.
Yeah,
because you're breathing in the gas, and you have to do your safety stop. I think it's 10 meters below or 15, depending on how deep you go. Yeah. So the body can regulate before you go to the surface. With free diving, we're not doing that. We can literally, the divers can dive down to, the elite divers are diving to 100 plus meters and then coming straight back up, and that might be a 4.5 minute dive. But because they have practiced their equalization, there's a lot of scientific research, and also, the body reacts very differently at different depths. And by understanding that and applying specific breathing techniques, they are able to do that safely without getting the bends.
Yeah. And do they use a rope for the free diving? Does that help?
Yes.
Regulate coming back up?
Yeah, absolutely. For depth diving, it's a safety protocol. So you are attached to the rope with a lanyard. So worst case scenario, if you had to black out underwater, also they have something called a dive eye, which is a video camera that's lit, and it moves down the rope with you. So they're watching you on screen. They also have sonar. The safety divers will come down and meet you. So you're not on your own the whole time. They will come down and swim back up with you from sometimes they'll go down to 30 meters, but essentially if there's a problem, they can pull the diver up on the rope.
Yeah.
But most of the time, blackouts tend to happen near the surface. And often you don't know you're going to black out. It's based on being really hypoxic. You don't have enough oxygen, so therefore your body shuts down. It's like fainting.
Yeah.
And if it does happen underwater, your safeties will pull you up. Or if it happens on the surface, you naturally fall into the water, but the safeties are right next to you, literally shoulder to shoulder. So they will hold you out of the water, and they will encourage the breathing to continue. So they get you back into a state where you are awake and alert.
Yeah.
And it is the nature. There's always, safety in all sports. But I would say with free diving, the safety protocols are probably higher than most because of the nature of what we do.
Yeah.
And I've never dived without safety. I always have someone with me, and that's really important. Never dive alone, ever. Because that's, what's going to happen if you black out and there's no one there.
Yeah.
And sadly, we have lost people because of that.
Yeah. No, it is an amazing sport, and I do wonder why I mean, obviously there is diving in the Olympics, but not this kind of diving, is there?
No.
No.
Free diving is considered such a niche sport, but we have our own world championships every year, actually happening in Cyprus in September. And
you'll be going to that?
I'm not part of that. I think they've chosen divers from, I think, 2019 results, specifically for the UK. A lot of the UK divers couldn't get out and travel, so But I'm still new to the sport. I mean, I've only been diving since 2018, so I think it'll take me a while before my results are considered for that.
Oh,
but I'm happy to take part in the UK championships. That's a great measuring stick for me.
Yeah. So tell me how you ended up in the UK then, because in terms of obviously, the water baby that you are, and diving and all of those things, I mean, obviously South Africa is beautiful, and I would imagine that diving there is incredible. So how did you end up in the UK? I mean, just in terms of the entrepreneurial side of you. I mean, I know that you've been on quite a journey through your career to get to this point. How did it all start for you, and what was that kind of journey like?
Well, I left South Africa, in my 20s, and back in those days, sounds so long ago, right? The UK had an arrangement with the South African government where we could travel on something called a working holiday visa, and essentially you could come to the UK for 2 years and work part-time and travel through the Schengen states, for example. So it was a kind of rite of passage. And that's why at that time, lots of South Africans, Australians, New Zealanders, we all came to the UK to have that experience and then go back to our home countries. And I just fell in love with the UK. I thought it opened my eyes to the rest of the world, because when you live at the bottom of Africa, you are so far away from everybody else.
Yeah.
And I love traveling and I love meeting new people. So I decided to come back to the UK to study, and eventually I was sponsored by a company to stay in the country, which allowed me to, just continue living here, and loved it so much. And eventually I was awarded my British citizenship. Mm-hmm. So it was, which I still to this day feel like it was a gift, because the people I've met, the experiences I've had, just amazing. And the opportunities that I've had here have opened a lot of doors. So as much as I would, I go back to South Africa, visit, love the country. It is obviously my home country. The UK is my home. And
you obviously have a love of food and restaurants and just that kind of social side, the events side. So tell us a little bit about that. Was that something that you brought with you from South Africa, or is that something you discovered over here? Or
can you repeat the question? Sorry.
The foodie side of you.
Oh. So that was my previous business. I've always loved food and hospitality, but I worked in the first couple of years in living in the UK. I worked in all sorts of hospitality environments, from private members clubs to catering to events. I just loved it. And when I was able to start my first business, which was back in 2010, I'd gained so much knowledge from working in the industry, and I'd also worked in a luxury networking industry, which was quite an eye-opener, because I got to meet incredible luxury brand marketeers, and also discovered networking for the first time. So I remember sitting down on my lounge floor with lots of pieces of paper around me going, here's all the things I love: so marketing, events, food, travel, what am I going to do for my first business? And I ended up creating a restaurant marketing consultancy, which I had for nearly 11 years. And it kind of ticked all the boxes for me, because I had worked with some incredible entrepreneurs who became my mentors in the first few years that I lived in the UK. And they gave me the confidence to pursue my dream of having my own business, but also the knowledge and the skills. And I thought, right, I'm going to take the marketing that I've learned. I'm going to work in an industry that I love. And I was looking for an opportunity where I would fit. You know, what can I give the market that no one else is giving? And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, there's lots of PR agencies doing amazing work, but I'm not really a PR person. I prefer the marketing and the strategy. So I started with marketing specifically for restaurants, being an independent marketing manager for restaurants who couldn't afford to hire someone full-time. So they would come to me and I would create bespoke services for them. So newsletters, copy for print. I'd organize events for them. And then social media started to come into its own really in 2010, 2011. And I thought, this is amazing, because for me, it was networking online. And I was one of those first million people in the UK to sign up to LinkedIn. I still have a badge for that somewhere. I was like, this is so awesome. I love it. It was very American at the time. You know, it hadn't kind of molded to the UK market yet, but I knew that was going to change things in a massive way. I mean, look how much we use LinkedIn now. So I thought, okay, I'm doing marketing and events already. How about I learn this social media for business and I offer that as a service? And that's exactly what I did. I literally hunted on Google for social media training. And believe me, back in 2010, that was very hard to find.
I can imagine.
And eventually I found someone who was doing like a short course on how to use, you know, Twitter and Facebook. And I was like, this is perfect. And I lapped it up. And I made it my mission from 2010 onwards to get really good at social media. And the more I learned, the more I could teach my clients or manage their profiles for them. So that was my business number one. Then one of my friends who also worked in hospitality said to me, you know, Tracey, you used to work for this luxury network, you know, but there's nothing like that in hospitality. And you know, we were always phoning each other going, how do you use Google, whatever, there's certain things in Google, or have you heard about this newsletter platform? It was this word of mouth, like, how do we do this? So we decided we were going to start organizing coffee mornings. This was in 2014 with all the restaurant people that we knew. And within 2 years, this is 2012. And within 2 years, we built up a following of people and we launched the London Restaurant Network, which was a network for restaurant professionals to get together once a month, very much like You Are the Media, but imagine everyone in the room is in hospitality, with speakers, you know, people from the tech world, celebrity chefs. We had everybody would come and do a talk, you know, Deliveroo when it started. Wow. How long ago it was. We had amazing people like Marcus Waring come and do a talk, you know, MasterChef professionals. And it worked because everybody was learning. And the individuals with the profile helped us grow our profile. So we had that business for 4 years along with my consultancy, and I loved it. It was just a joy. And it's a very long answer to your question.
No, that's perfect. I mean, because as you say, networking has become such. Maybe it's just because I'm relatively new to networking. I started my business not even 3 years ago, and that was my first thing. Was like, well, I need to go to some networking things, and actually to find networking groups that I felt I fitted into took me a good couple of years to find a network of people that I felt I could collaborate with and that I was on the same wavelength as, because so many networking groups are kind of, people just trying to find business from other people that they're sitting with or giving out business cards. So, to find networks like You Are the Media, and I know you've been quite a big part of that in terms of connecting people and socializing within those networking groups, which I think is really important for networking, is that social side rather than just the business side. So, you know, I think that's a fantastic business. And now we've all gone on to Zoom, the networking thing, and as we know from You Are the Media, that there is this kind of online offline version now, this hybrid version that is in person and also on Zoom at the same time. So can you see yourself, I mean, obviously you've gotten into your business has changed completely in the last year.
Yeah.
Has the networking helped you though? Is networking something you still use?
It is absolutely the main frame of my business. As I say, my first foray into networking was in 2004 when I worked with the Luxury Marketing Council, which was essentially a network for luxury brand managers. And so, yes, and from that point onwards, I have always used networking. And when we couldn't find a network, we created our own.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I say for people listening to this, you don't have to suddenly build a business and have this, big network. You could just get 4 people who do what you do and love what you love and meet them once a month, every month with a strategy, with an agenda.
Yeah.
There's a network. And I've done this on numerous occasions. What I will say, what was very interesting with the COVID pandemic, after having left London, moved, I was in a different market. I did a huge rebrand during the 2020 of my marketing and social media business. And I decided to really niche it down just to social media training because that's something I love to do. And I used to be a lecturer in the subject of social media marketing for Le Cordon Bleu, the chef's school in London. So that love of teaching and the tech behind it and the networking all came together in that. But what the pandemic also showed us is what the market wants. And I think I mentioned this on the You Are the Media event when I was talking to everybody on stage, is that people looked at my website and went, okay, she does social media. And I used free diving as the analogy for deep diving into it. And I yes, I got clients, thankfully, but there was this other thing going on where people were like, they're just curious, like, how do you hold your breath? And what's breathing, breath work? And you dive. Tell us about that. We know you do social media. And I have to say, maybe it's the experience I've had setting up businesses, and also the time, the headspace during the COVID pandemic to think about what I wanted to do. I was able to transition very quickly from the social media training into the breath work because I could see what the market wanted, but I also felt very passionately about the breath work as much as I had about my social media training from 2010, but it was time for a change. And half the battle is letting go of something that you've built and you love and and I had to have a conversation with myself, including with my business coach, who said to me, his words were, Tracey, just do both and see what people want. So I did.
Yeah.
And guess what they wanted?
They wanted to breathe.
They wanted to learn how to breathe properly. What a gift. What an absolute gift. I feel a huge amount of gratitude because in the last year, I've launched I'm in the process of launching business number 4, but I've had to deal with, wasn't a failure. I see the social media rebrand as an enabler. Because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Absolutely.
So, and that you talk about creativity. You pour yourself into these things, don't you?
Yeah.
And you think outside the box, and you learn new technology, and you see and then you put it out there like a new baby, and go, here you go. And people go, oh, we don't want that thing, we want the other thing. So I think it's been a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
But I know for honestly, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I hate to say something that sounds so cliched, but it really feels like I found my purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes that weird up, down, roundabout journey to kind of come back to where we started. And I've got this thing now that what we were doing age 9 or 10, and swimming and being around water all the time. It's kind of there inside you, and it doesn't matter what way you go or how your life pans out. You will always kind of come back to what it is that you love, and it will find you again. And I do feel that's kind of what's happened with you. And the fact that you were using the free diving analogy within the website sparked that interest in other people. So if you, exactly as you say, if you've not done that, then you wouldn't have discovered that this is what people actually want.
I totally agree. And I also think in terms of mindset, you have to be open to the change. I think for me personally, I had so much change from 2018 to 2020 that my resilience levels were much higher than usual. And actually, when things didn't quite go the way I'd planned, I was like, well, we've been through a pandemic. There were struggles in 2019. This is a walk in the park compared to that, do you know? And I was open to the change. So that's why I went for it. I thought, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to trust myself and my gut instinct. And I have to come back to your good question about networking. Because I'd spent so much time on Zoom in these networks over the last year, I was able to get immediate feedback from people. So I wasn't going into my business number 4 blind. And I say this to everybody, use your network. If you don't have one, create your own. You know, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
And right now, I can honestly put hand on my heart, networking brings in the vast majority of my clients because they see me, followed closely by social media, because yes, again, they see me. So, you know, I don't have a website yet, and I'm launching a new brand name. That hasn't stopped me from having a business, and it hasn't stopped people working with me. So
yeah, you're a serial entrepreneur. I mean, it's just. But have you ever? I mean, we are coming to the end now. I won't. But I can't believe. You know, we haven't even touched on the fashion and the hair modeling. Oh, there's so much stuff because we do have a shared love of fashion and work. We both worked in fashion. But yes, I was sort of talking to Mark again about networking and talking about how you need to create the community before you need it. And that comes to your point about the network. You know, if you're not there in those networks, if you haven't built that following, that community, then when you do launch something new, when you do experiment and try something new, you've got that audience there already that are willing to support you and go with you and give you the correct feedback and, you know, and help you along the way. So.
And even give you feedback you may not want, let's be fair, because not everyone's going to like what you do or get what you do. That's usually the case. Because the big challenge for me is people say, well, I breathe anyway.
Yes.
What do you mean I mean breathing? It's like, that's fine, but let me just explain, if you would like me to, how you can breathe correctly or better.
Yes.
You know, why should it be because we have a major issue in our health that we suddenly take note?
Yeah.
It's a hard step change to work through with some people, but the opportunity to talk about it like this today it gets it to a wider audience. So I'm so thankful.
Yeah. Oh no, you're more than welcome. I mean, it just, in what I do, I stand up sometimes and say to people, okay, stand up, we need to breathe. And they look at me like I'm mad, you know, and you say, well, this is like a workout for your inside. This is a workout for your speaking muscles, you know, your breathing muscles. And the wider we can spread that message that, you know, we need to breathe properly in order to do so many things. But thank you so much for your time today. I've got one picture that I'm going to show, which is you underwater, Tracey. And this was to promote a wellbeing festival that you were part of this month. What else have you got coming up that you can share with us?
And the other thing that I'm doing, obviously, is my monthly courses. They run for 4 weeks. I'm taking on September and October bookings currently. I run them every month, small groups of up to 8. And I also work one-to-one with people. And I'm working with corporates in terms of wellness programs, developing that within, you know, larger organizations. So very happy to chat to anybody who'd like to know more about this.
Fabulous. I've put your LinkedIn link there on the screen, which I will put in any blurb that I put out with this podcast. Is that the best place for people to find you?
LinkedIn and Instagram are my chosen social media channels. So if people are on those channels, they can DM me. But I'll also share with you my one-to-one booking link where they can literally book a Zoom or a phone call with me immediately. This is all happening while the website's being built. So I don't have a site as yet, but I'll send you the one-to-one booking link as well.
Fabulous. Oh, brilliant. Oh, it was just so fascinating. I could just talk for hours. I mean, it's just, and it's something that we don't talk about enough, our breathing. As you can probably tell, I'm a bit of an advocate as well. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Tracey. And I will certainly be using some of those exercises, and I'm looking forward to maybe taping my mouth. And certainly I will be talking to my daughter about holding her breath to clear her nose. So yeah, lots of really interesting stuff there. So enjoy your weekend and the rest of your week. Thank you very much, Tracey Howes.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's been a pleasure.